you represent teachers from across many career stages in United States of America, no? We would like to ask you or to uh, ask you to share what do they say? What have you heard? What you know about what the teachers say about how to create the conditions for career long and lifelong learning? Something that Pia also says. How and where does induction strategies for induction fit mentoring? What role can play? So we would like to ask you to share that experience to us, please.
Good morning. It has already been a pleasure to serve on this panel. Um, I don't know about you, but I've taken a lot of notes from my colleagues. And Alejandra, you said something that I hope that everyone was hearing throughout is the through line. The line that's going through all of what you've heard, regardless of the question you asked. And that is because of the word that you use, Pia. This is an ecosystem. And an ecosystem necessarily means that everything is connected and everything is interdependent on the other things. So even though you asked us to focus on one piece of the system, you heard the common threads, because if we don't have this piece, then we're not going to have that piece. Let me begin by just thanking our host from Chile. It has been an amazing conference, and UNESCO as well for creating this space um, to really dig in to the recommendations on the high level panel on a teaching profession. Enoch, you said it's time for action. And I think everyone in this room agrees with that. And I will say that as part of that action, our hosts have already created a space where we are coming together, where we're coming together, that we understand it is our shared responsibility, all of us. If we say every student and we mean every student, it's going to be all of us that have to share in that. So the fact that we have folks, representatives from government, from all over the world, we have international and regional organizations coming together. And of course, we have our teacher unions. I am so honored to be here, not only representing the National Education Association and our 3 million educators throughout the United States, but also representing other educators from the United States in our sister union, AAFT, and other unions within the United States who represent educators, not just teachers, but support professionals as well, who come together as part of that system. And as I sit here thinking about the power within Education International, specifically representing 180 countries, 33 million educators. So, Alejandro, when you ask me what are they saying, that's a lot of people saying a lot of things. A lot of things. And I have the privilege and honor of traveling all over this country and listening and listening. And I did hear that word earlier, but I need to emphasize that. We need to listen to our teachers. We all talk about educator shortage, and I loved what you said about um, our minister from Spain. What you were saying about, it's not an educator shortage, right? And you talked about abandoning. I talk about, I don't use the word shortage either, or I don't talk about the shortage of teachers. I talk about the shortage of resources that provide teachers to do the jobs they love. I talk about the shortage of the supports for our students so that our educators aren't always having to stand in the gaps that are created by the greater society. I talk about the shortage of respect. I taught eighth graders the wonders of science for 31 years. And as a teacher, I never experienced the kind of professional respect that other professions have. We still have a pay equity gap. All over the world, we have a pay equity gap. When you look at professionals who are similarly situated in education or experience in the US, there is a 25% gap. Of course, we don't respect our teachers. We don't pay them in a way that reflects that. Of course, we don't respect them because anyone who ever went to school comes into our classrooms and tells us how we're supposed to teach our students. That's not okay. We are the professionals. We spent the time learning and gaining the experience. We should be respected to make the teaching and learning decisions for our students. When we think about the lack of autonomy and collaborative and collaborative authority that exists in our schools right now, of course it points to a lack of respect. And when I talk about putting big R, I use the phrase big R resources. That's money, time, and people. When we talk about the lack of big R resources that do not provide our educators with something that is a core value for them, and that is continuous learning. Throughout that continuum, it is absolutely critical that we are here together and we're thinking about these solutions together because that is the only way that we're going to change it and sustain those changes. So let me specifically talk about preparation. When I talk with educators and we talk about preparation, as I said, we talk about that pre-preparation all the way through, and I'll go to teacher leadership because that's really important to understand that right from the beginning, we should be teaching teachers how to lead throughout their profession. But as we talk about that reality, what they say to me, whether I'm talking to teachers in the US or from around the world, is that they do not have the time in their day to actually do the kind of professional development that they know they need. That needs to be built into the day. Professional development, especially when you're talking about those at the beginning of their career. Because you talk, ask me about mentorship and induction. Not only is it an important part of that continuum of professional development, but at that time, it's especially important that as our teachers are learning their craft and they're practicing and they are collaborating with colleagues, that they have the time to do that. Those colleagues who have stepped up and they are providing the mentoring and the training for those teachers also need the time. They also need to be paid to do that work, and they also need the opportunity to collaborate with each other. So, as we think about some of the strategies, I want to share some of the strategies that we're using in the US, new strategies, innovations. And again, we did it from that place of we're all responsible, so a partnership. So we put together an apprenticeship residency program in the state of Washington. And from the start, we knew we needed partners. We needed our parents to be partners. We needed our community organizations to be partners. We needed to make sure that at levels of government, so at the state level and at the local level of government, they were involved. And who was at the center of that? Educators. Who was supporting and building it? Our education union. That's who did this work. So our apprenticeship and residency program was designed in a way that usually they are not designed. So it's the first ever union-run teacher preparation in our country. And we did it very, very specifically to meet several goals. Of course, to try to address the retention of educators, because we knew they needed to be well prepared as they went into the classroom. But also, we know that we have to address the issue of diversity in the teaching workforce in our country. We know we do not have specifically enough Black and Brown teachers, and we're going in the wrong direction because fewer and fewer college students are signing up to become teachers. So we designed this residency program to target teachers of color coming into teaching from other professions at a Bachelor of Arts level. We also know we have a shortage in special education teachers. So we specifically designed it so when they finish the residency, they would have a certification in special education. And as I said, at the core of it was our educators. So let me tell you this number: 80%, 80% retention of these teachers who went through this apprenticeship program after 3 years. That was the retention rate. And they had positive effects on student outcomes. And so we have evidence of how we can build programs that center our teachers, that demonstrate we have respect for the work they do, and that we understand that learning is the core of everything, and it is the future of our students. And let me end here. We understand that universal free education for all is essential to any government, certainly to any democracy, and making sure that our students are not just learning now, but they are the leaders of a just society. Thank you.